Kangam for leading the songs for us. Tonight, for a short meditation before we go for prayer, let's turn to Psalm number 34 and verses 17 and 18. Psalm 34, verses 17 and 18. The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. We are familiar with this psalm. In the superscription of this psalm, you get the background or the occasion. And the occasion, you can go back to 1 Samuel chapter 21 and the last part of that, and also to 1 Samuel next chapter, chapter 22. Also, you can see just after this event, as David before King Abimelech, king of Gath, and David thought that he could be secure there in the Philistines' king, and found out that it made it rather dangerous. His life was not safe there in that Philistines region, and then he feigned himself to be an insane man, and Abimelech, king of God, drove him out, and that was his safety. And in that occasion, just after that occasion, you can read that in 1 Samuel chapter 22, and David and his men went to the cave called Adullam, Cape Adullam, which is not far from this, Gad, and about 10 kilometers away from that where King Abimelech dwells, and also not too far from Bethlehem. And you can read in 1 Samuel 22, verses 1 and 2, there his family were also in trouble because of King Saul, and who tried to take David's life. And not only David's life, his family were also in trouble. And they joined to him in that camp, Adullam. And there were about 400 men, you will read afterward, gathered unto David. They were all broken-hearted and distressed, troubled people. And those people gathered unto David. And David, maybe writers thought that in that same camp, Adullam, he wrote this poem, which is acrostic poem or psalm, and it's beautifully written down, and sang this song or this poem inside that camp, especially towards those broken-hearted and the distressed people that gather unto him, and he encouraged them with this psalm. So I titled this short meditation from these two portions, references, verses, as finding God's deliverance in desperation. Finding God's deliverance in desperation. That was a situation that we found there. Let's see that verse number 17 again as we have read. David says that the righteous cry and the Lord heareth. One thing what David experienced in his life is that God hears when he prayed. He experiences God's interfering when he was in trouble, and when he cries to God, God did answer unto him. He knew that. Even in this psalm, you can read in verse number 6 also, he mentioned that this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. Not only that, in verse number 15 too, he mentioned that the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are upon their cry. David very clearly knew that the Lord opens his ear to the cry of his people. He knew that it is true. He experiences them, and he encourages those troubled people. Those 400 in the camp of Adullam, he encourages them. Friends, you know what? When we pray, the Lord hears our prayer. This is true. This is true in my life. This is true. You can ask to God's people. Like you can ask to Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verses 10 through 20. When Hannah prays, God did answer. We can take many references. You ask to James in the New Testament, Lord's half-brother. He was known as prayerful man. And he said in James 5:16, he said, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another that ye may be healed. Then he concluded, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. James knew very well that his Lord, his master, hears prayer. He was a just man. At the same time, he was a prayerful man. Writers and a historian says that James' knee were like the camel's knee. Because of much prayer, because of much kneeling on the ground. He can kneel down in a concrete places, and he can pray anywhere. James knew that God answers prayer. You can take an example like Hezekiah's prayer. When Isaiah came and asked and told him that, set in order. The Lord is going to take your life. Hezekiah wept. He turned towards the wall and he wept sore. And before his prayer ended, Lord told Isaiah to go back and meet Hezekiah. And Isaiah came back. And the Lord had extended his life another 15 years. You know the story in the book of 2 Kings. And Hezekiah's prayer was heard. If you come down and ask to Daniel, and Daniel's prayer in chapter 9, and verses 21 to 23, if you read there in verse number 21, while he was yet in prayer, he was in pronouncing the prayer. Prayer was not ended. The answer came. And God sent Gabriel, his angel, and did answer the prayer of Daniel. And also you can come back again to New Testament, ask to many people in the New Testament. Cornelius, in the New Testament, in the book of Acts chapter 10, we found there, his prayers come up to God. He was a Gentile. He was a pagan man. His prayers and alms were known to the heaven world. And God sent Simon Peter to him, and his family were saved. His prayer was answered. David knew that he encourages those 400 men in that camp of Adullam that encouraged, sang this song, and said that, my friends, God answers our prayer. And he said in verse number 17, again, the righteous cry, and the Lord hear it. And the second part of verse number 17, and is that he delivered them, we can say in this way, God delivered them out of all their troubles. David doesn't mean that if we believe in God, we'll have a trouble-free life. No, not in that sense. But however, when we go through troubles, David, what he meant here is that he is able to deliver us from the troubles. And that's also true in David's life and in David's testimony. You can read, we understand about his situation, and there are times that he was in jeopardy, he was in great danger, no way, no escape, and King Saul and his men were together in the camp, and David knew that this may be the last time or last day for him, but God rescued him. God delivered him. There are several times God also rescued him, even from a lion and also from bear, and he kills them. Even Goliath, the giant, and through God's help, he kills Goliath. So David knew that God can deliver from our troubles. We may go through many sufferings and troubles. We can ask to, Daniel again. Remember his story of, in the lion's den. And his enemies thought that he's done. His life is gone. Next morning, maybe his bones will be found. But he was well, active, and alive there. And the king was so happy to find that his friend Daniel was alive. God can rescue. We can also read in the book of Acts about Peter's miraculous escape from prison. And he thought that it was a vision. In Acts chapter 12, verses 6 through 11, you can read that. And he thought that he was seeing a vision. The angel took him out of the prison cell and closed the first gate and the second gate. In verse number 11, when Peter was come to himself, and he said, "Now I know of a surety that the Lord had sent his angel and had delivered me out of the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews." Friends, we may go through troubles. Indeed, we are. Many of us. We had, all of us, including me, we have troubles and difficulties. That is the nature of life. In this earth, you cannot find a place where trouble is not there. A trouble-free life you can't find anywhere in the world. This is the nature of the world. It's a sin-saturated world. But however, as David told these 400 men that we can believe in him, he can rescue us from many of such troubles. And David knew that by experience, he knew that God is able to rescue. Psalm 34, in the same number, verse 19, 34:19, David also said here, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous." He knew that. That's true to all of us. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, troubles of the righteous. We have difficulties and trouble, but the Lord delivered him out of them all. Maybe the inner trouble sometime. Maybe the spiritual trouble sometime. The Lord rescued, the Lord delivered. Maybe sometime the literal or physical trouble sometime. He delivered, he rescued. The Lord is able. Verse number 18 for the last for tonight, before we go for prayer. Here in verse number 18, "The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit." God's nearness to the broken-hearted people. Tonight, from our brother Kangam, we heard that some of us are going through troubles. Brother Aldrin and Sister Choshu lost their, immediate family members. It's a trouble time. Sometimes it's kind of broken-hearted. And here in this text also, David himself is in that situation. He himself was broken-hearted. He was in a desperate situation. He was hiding as a fugitive. As he was running from King Saul, he was hiding in that cave of Adullam. 400 men joined to him. They were in distress. They were in debt. They were discontented. All of them, all those 400 men were in trouble. They were in distress. This psalm seems like a kind of a beacon of hope that David sung to them so that their heart would be enlarged. Their heart would, close and go towards God, and they'll close to God in the time of trouble. In 1 Samuel 22, verse 1, let me just read. "And David therefore departed thence from that king of God, from Abimelech, and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brethren and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him. Verse number 2, and everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, everyone that was discontented, gathered themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them, and there were with him about 400 men. Later in chapters 27, another 200 men joined to him, and there were 600 men with him, with David. And at this time, at this moment, he had 400 men. His family men came, and along with them, 400 men came. These were distressed, in debt, discontented people. They are broken-hearted people. And David said here to those afflicted, broken-hearted, and he knew that in verse number 17, the Lord will hear you when you pray. And also he says that the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart. David knew that. In his own life, he understands and he experiences those things. Another psalmist, unknown writer, Psalm 147, verse number 3, also said, He healed, God healed, that's what he means, God. He healed the broken in heart and binded up their wounds. When we are in trouble, when we are in debt or distress, where to flee, where to go? We need to go to God. When we go to God, the psalmist 147 said that he healed the broken in heart and also binded up their inner wounds. Isaiah also said in 61 verse 1, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. Brokenhearted and meek and those captives, to them the Lord is nigh. Friends, if you have trouble, if you are discontented sometime, if you are kind of brokenhearted, where to go? Please go to God, and He would heal your brokenheartedness, and He will heal also your inner wounds. And Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, Matthew also said, Blessed are they that mourn, that cry, that brokenhearted, that those who are discontented, in distress, and in debt. And he said, for they shall be comforted. Friends, as we go for prayer, remember that God hears and God also responded to our cries. Trust in His faithfulness and make your request known unto Him. Remember that, as James says, that your prayer availeth much. Your prayers are powerful. Pray with your, open heart, with a genuine heart, believing, trusting that prayers God will hear. Remember, understand that God hears our prayer. David knew that, and it is true, and we also should pray. May God bless us. We'll collect these prayer points.